Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you everything Pokemon. I'm Jack, and today, after a huge wait, I'm finally bringing you the Florges EX deck analysis. Me and Joe have been talking about this deck analysis, how it's on the way for about 2 or 3 weeks now, ever since it was played quite a bit in the UK, but with a couple of issues on my end to do with my computer working, and then Christmas, well, not just Christmas, school for me. I haven't actually been able to get around to recording this, but finally everything seems to have settled down again. Issues resolved, so hopefully you guys will be seeing this pretty soon after it's recorded. But yeah, like I said, we've been talking about this deck analysis for quite a while, so I'm just going to hop straight into it. But yeah, as you can see, it's Florges EX is the main attacker, but with it's very focused around Aromatisse and other fairies. A lot like an Aroma box deck, but with it's a lot more fairy based. But yeah, let's get straight into it. Starting with the 3 Florges EX. Only 160 HP, which is not relatively low, but it's lower than usual for EXs, which can mean Florges EX can be easier to KO than other EXs, but not much can hit 200 that isn't a Yveltal or a Mewtwo at the moment. And we have resistance to Yveltal and only 2 energy for Mewtwo's. I could be completely zoning out on something else that can hit pretty big. Obviously things like Xerneas can, but as you'll see in a few moments time, but even so, it's still not going to be easy to one-shot. It's just going to be easier than some of the other EXs in the format. But we'll run it pretty much for this Bright Garden attack. The Bright Garden is the star of the deck. 20 times the number of grass and fairy Pokemon you have in play, meaning that with a Muscle Band, that's 140 damage if you've got a full bench, for 2 energy, which is crazy efficient, and pretty much why Florges is so good at the moment, just because of how efficient the deck is. It doesn't really run out of energy very quickly, especially with Aromatisse in the deck as well, obviously helping you move the energy around. You often keep a lot of energy on board, and you don't really need a lot of energy on board overall to be hitting these big numbers like 120, 140 anyway, so you don't need all that much energy. By the time if you do get head-ringered, the deck does become a lot less efficient, because 140 for 3 is not as good, but obviously we've got 3 Florges EX and then 2 Xerneas EX as well, so you're going to have at least one attacker that hasn't been head-ringed that will have some sort of efficient attack. So that's not head-ringer isn't too much of a problem for the deck. The other thing to note is the lead attack. Lead is surprisingly good when you actually start with Florges and can't really get off to a great start. It lets you search for a supporter and put it into your hand, right ready for next turn. Any supporter in the deck you like. If you've got a big bench but nothing else really going, you can get a Colress, you can get the Juniper, Fan Club, anything like that, ready for next turn to be able to do whatever you want. So it's not a bad setup Pokemon in itself as well, but like I said, primarily you're going to be running the Bright Garden, running it for the Bright Garden attack. The final thing to note is that resistance to Dark, which is really nice, just because it means Yveltals have to have an extra energy just to be able to do that extra 20 damage. And sometimes with the resistance, they can't quite knock you out. The other thing is, baby Yveltals without a Muscle Band only do 10 to you, which is so strong, because you can quite easily one-shot them with 4 on the bench, and 5 on the bench and a Muscle Band. You one-shot them, but you can quite easily take 2 shots on them, especially as they're only doing between 10 and 30 a turn if they manage to get a Muscle Band. So yeah, Florges EX is the star of the deck. We've then got a 3-2 Aromatisse line, 3 Spritzy, just because these guys are catcher bait like nothing else in the game at the moment. As soon as you drop a Spritzy, it's so much catcher bait. They're pretty easy to knock out, so some opponents don't mind wasting the Lysander if it's going to put you a turn behind in regards of getting the Aromatisse out. If it's going to put you a turn behind, then they'll quite happily waste the catcher to grab the Spritzy. So that's why I've got 3, and then 2 Aromatisse just because you need at least 2. I wouldn't consider a third because from what I've noticed with the deck, once Aromatisse is out, especially if you get 2 out, opponents seem to focus on where your energy is based rather than taking out the Aromatisse, which I feel is a mistake in a lot of people's plays, but they seem to focus more on, if you've got a 4 energy Xerneas on the bench, they seem to focus on the 4 energy Xerneas rather than the thing that's going to manipulate the energy, which personally I see as a bit of a mistake, but I guess there's different ways of dealing with the deck. But yeah, 2 means you draw into it a lot quicker, and obviously you can get 2 out at once, which will just boost up Florges EX even more. You run it obviously for the fairy transferability, letting you move fairies around pretty much freely, and as you can see, the only energy that isn't a fairy that we run in the deck is the double colourless, pretty much entirely for Xerneas, but it has a couple of other uses as well. To help sort of with bench sitter wise, to power up Bright Garden, I've got a 2/1/1 Slurpuff line, so 2 Swirlix, and then 1 of the Sweet Veil and 1 of the Tasting Slurpuff, 1 each. Basically, you're going to be getting out whichever one you need the most in the matchup. This Slurpuff is amazing against anything that plays not Yveltal, Laser, meaning that you're not taking that extra 30 damage each turn, especially if you spread your energy out well. It's just so strong. And then anything that doesn't play Laser, you want to be getting this Slurpuff out just to be able to draw 1 more each turn. The other thing is it combos really well with Fairy Garden, meaning that when one of your Pokemon does go down, you can throw it up to the active and draw 2, because Tasting lets you draw 1 if it's on the bench and draw 2 if it's active. So you can draw 2 as well as your card returns, so that's 3 draws. You can then Fairy transfer one of these Fairy Energy onto the Slurpuff, and then free retreat using Fairy Garden, and then move the energy back off onto an attacker. So it's an incredibly useful draw Pokemon, and it's probably one of the most utilised cards in the deck, actually. Initially I didn't have it in here, but just in favour of other sort of fairy attackers, and I think I also tried the pure Sweet Veil, but definitely worth the slot, the Slurpuff. It just increases draw power so much. We've then got 2 Xerneas, Baby Xerneas. 130 HP makes it pretty hard to knock out, especially with the resistance to Dark. And Geomancy is just such good acceleration at the moment. Choose 2 bench and attach a fairy from your deck to each of them. That gets out 4 fairies by turn 2 by only attacking once, meaning that you can be swinging with X-Blast pretty much turn 2 if you've gone second, which is just crazy. Obviously, Rainbow Spear is really good for Safeguarders, as it one-shots both Suicune and Sigilyph. The discard energy is not great, but you run so much energy, and the deck focuses on conserving energy rather than attaching it a lot. So you don't mind discarding that 1 just to get around a Safeguarder. So yeah, that's also the Safeguard sort of stopper. And the final Pokemon is Xerneas EX. This is the deck's big hitter, or more consistent big hitter, as X-Blast always does 140. Breakthrough is also really good as well. Obviously, 60-30 for a DC and a Fairy is not bad at all, especially if you manage to get a Muscle Band on this guy. The 30 damage sets up X-Blasts on anything that's got 170 HP, and an 80-30 snipe if you've got a Muscle Band is nothing to sniff at, especially for a DCE compatible attack. Again, the resistance to Dark is really nice as well, because it means even though you're going to be stacking quite a lot of energy on this Xerneas, Yveltal still might struggle to get a one-shot on it sometimes. So onto the trainers. For the A-Spec, I'm actually running a Dowsing Machine. I have tried both Computer Search and Scoop Up Cyclone. Just sort of, Scoop Up Cyclone to stop damage, and Computer Search just to get the Aromatisse out a lot quicker. But personally, I think Dowsing Machine is the best for the deck, for a couple of reasons. One, it gets you more trainers, basically. It'll get you a 4th Max Potion, it'll get you a 5th Fairy Garden, it'll get you another VS Seeker or Supporter in general, and it'll also get you a 4th Muscle Band. And I feel that's more useful than the Computer Search for sort of the Aromatisse, because you draw into the Aromatisse, especially with Ultra Balls, you draw into the Aromatisse or an out to the Aromatisse relatively often, when you need it. So personally, I like Dowsing Machine in the deck. And also if you have to bench play the stadium first, and they're playing 4 stadiums, like you're playing a Dimension Valley deck or anything like that, you can still win the stadium war because you can get the 5th stadium out, where they more than often probably won't be running Dowsing Machine in favour of something like Computer Search, because they're often a lot clunkier, the decks. But yeah, I've gone for Dowsing Machine as the ace spec for the deck. We've then got 3 Max Potion, simply because this is the best heal in the deck overall. Obviously, it gets locked out. You get locked out of it when playing against Seismitoad, but with Aromatisse, if you just move all the energy onto the bench and then Max Potion, you're getting a free heal of all of the damage, and you're not losing any energy unless you've got the DCE attached, of course. You're not losing any energy, and you're still hitting for the same amount next turn. But all of a sudden, you've got full health again, meaning that they're going to have to try and one shot you. The 3 means that they have to have outs to one shot you a lot more of the time. I have tried it with 2. Personally, but I think 3 is the best number, especially with the 1 Lysander. I would perhaps, if you were to run Scoop Up Cyclone, I perhaps would run only 2 Max Potion, and then perhaps another supporter or something like that, just because that's often what you're going to be Dowsing Machining for, or things like that. But I think with the current list, I think 3 Max Potion is the perfect number. The next card is Professor's Letter. We've only got 1 because Geomancy finds energy just as well, if not better. But the single Professor's Letter means that you can always get a Geomancy turn 1 if you can find the Letter and the Xerneas. So it's another out to energy to a Geomancy turn 1. And to be quite honest, I pretty much put Professor's Letter in all of my decks at the moment, just because there's no amazing energy search from the deck that's incredibly efficient. So for me, Professor's Letter is a staple in pretty much every deck. But personally, I can see why you wouldn't play it, as sort of Xerneas does just as well with Geomancy and attaches the energy. But yeah, I've got the Professor's Letter in here just to ensure we have more outs to getting that turn 2 Geomancy. If I keep referring to it as turn 1, I just mean going second turn 1. We've then got 2 Startling Megaphone. Garbodor seems to be coming back, and especially with the release of Primal Clash, which is only 2 or 3 weeks away, not Gardevoir, Garbodor overall, I think is going to see a huge jump in play. And because of that, I've decided to put 2 Megaphone in here, and not just preparing for the Garbodor that is going to eventually pop up, but because the deck is completely shut down by Ability Lock, because it all focuses around Fairy Transfer and keeping your energy on the board. And if they can take 4 or 5 energy off the board, more than often that's game for them, because you don't have the ability to move your energy around, and a lot of the time you will have spread the energy about just in case they can take a big swing, meaning that you're going to struggle to get back into the game as you can't move your energy around. It also helps with getting off Float Stones, Muscle Bands, anything like that that's going to help your opponent do a bit more damage or one-shot you or whatever next turn. Really good for things like Domfan that love to throw Float Stones and Muscle Bands on their guys just to do even more damage. But it's really, really important against the Garbodor matchup, which can really shut down the deck. There's only 3 abilities in the deck, if you're counting these 2 as different, but the deck is so reliant on Fairy Transfer, I think you definitely need to run 2. Next we've got 3 Ultra Ball. I would love to run a 4th in here, just to have another out to Aromatisse, and perhaps I would take out the Letter or a Max Potion or something like that for 1, but I feel 3 is good enough. We're running 16 Pokemon in here, so it's not like we're never going to be drawing into Pokemon, especially basic Pokemon, because there's only 4 evolved Pokemon, meaning that you're going to be running into basic Pokemon a lot faster than some of the decks that don't run as many, just increasing the damage for Bright Garden overall. But having 3 Ultra Ball just means you can quite easily search for the Aromatisse. You don't mind discarding some of these cards. You can quite easily discard the Slurpuff you're not going to use. One of the Spritzees once you've got an Aromatisse or 2 down. Honestly, one of the energies as well, because you're going to be conserving energy, so it means you're not going to need all 9 of the fairies. And also fairy gardens, because if you know your opponent's not playing stadiums, like in a Virgin against a Virgin or anything like that, if you know your opponent's not going to be playing stadiums, then there's no real reason for you to be running 4. So there's no real, and there's nothing that you can't really discard with Ultra Ball. So it's just really good Pokemon search. Finally, for trainers, 3 VS Seeker, just because, well, 2 VS Seeker seems to be pretty staple in most decks at the moment. But we also run a couple of one-of supporters that I'll go through in a second. So it just means you can quite happily discard those early with Ultra Ball or Juniper or anything like that, and still have outs to them later on. Not really much else to say about VS Seeker, other than it's just so strong at the moment. Next we've got 1 AZ going into the supporters. AZ is just another really good card for denying damage. Obviously, if you have got a highly damaged Pokemon with only energy on it, you can quite easily fairy transfer the energy off the Pokemon and then AZ it up, meaning that you're not discarding anything. You will discard any tools if they have any tools on them, or the DCE, obviously, because you can't move the DCE. But there's no particular downside if you haven't got either the DCE or a tool on them, and then you can play it straight back down. It's also good for getting out of the active. If your opponent wants to catch a Summon Cup and you don't have the Aromatisse out to be able to get the energy on and free retreat with Fairy Garden, it's just good for getting out the active, but primarily you're going to be using it for its sort of healing mechanic. Next up we've got 1 Colrus. I personally don't like Colrus all that much, but in a deck where you're going to be benching a lot, because that's going to increase your damage output, Colrus is just too good to pass up, especially as you're going to be getting, a lot of the time you're going to be getting 5 cards at least anyway, and that's not including what your opponent's got on the bench. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Colrus, and I don't like to run more than 1 in my deck ever, but 1 is definitely justified in the deck just because you're going to be stacking up the bench quite a lot. 2 Lysander is, again, a lot like VS Seeker, a staple at the moment, just because of how big Domfan is, or how big it is online at least. It's not seeing too much play in tournaments, but that's another conversation for another day. It just means that you can catch up Domfans and take out all of their energy in 1 quite easily. You only need, if you've hit them once or you've sniped them with Xerneas, you don't need all that much to be able to take them out. And the 2 means that you can again discard 1 early on and still have an out to them, plus VS Seekers late game. And if you can get a couple of consistent Lysanders on Domfan and take out 2 Domfans in 2 turns, meaning that they have no energy on the field, that pretty much stops the deck dead. And you can just continually take prizes on whatever they've got left on the board. Next up we've got 3N. Personally, for me, I've been running 3N a lot more than 4N lately, just because this deck can go quite aggressive. It can be quite aggressive very early on, and can take 2 or 3 prizes before your opponent takes 1. It then does slow down a little bit because it struggles against huge EXs, but you don't want to be going ahead and then having to end to sort of 2 or 3 cards, giving your opponent 4 or 5, because it's just going to give them more outs than you, unless you're specifically looking for something. You don't want to be using N, particularly late game. You want to be using things like Juniper or Colrus late game. It's still pretty good in the early game, obviously getting you both 6 cards, but it's a lot less disruption now and a lot more of a staple draw supporter, meaning that I don't feel I want to run 4 anymore because it's not as disruption based anymore. It's not as good a draw support as Juniper. It's not as good a draw support as Colrus in a lot of situations anymore, especially with decks that bench a lot. So I've just decided to put the 3 in here. Obviously you can get a lot more with VS Seeker, but overall I feel 3 is probably the best number, especially as you're running that 1 AZ as well. I sort of took out an N for the AZ, and I think the AZ is more important than a 4th N overall. Next up we've got 3 Fan Club, just to be able to increase your damage output even more, and it gets Spritzies out really well. It gets 2 Spritzies out, meaning that they have to take 2 Spritzy prizes in a turn, which is I'm pretty sure near impossible. But there's probably ways of doing it. But even so, and it also increases your damage output. Late game, once you've got everything set up and you just need that one extra Pokemon, it's still a good supporter just to get that extra 20 damage. But bar that, there's nothing really else to say about it. And then 4 Juniper, just because it's staple in pretty much every deck at the moment. Best draw support in the game, in my opinion, and so efficient. Again, there's not too much you mind this discarding. There's some things obviously you don't want to discard, but if you don't want to discard that much, then you don't use the Juniper, you use another supporter. Finally, we've got 4 Fairy Garden, just for that free retreat. 4 just because that wins the Stadium War. If they're running 3, you win it automatically. If they're running 4, providing they place first, you still win it. And some decks aren't even playing Stadiums at the moment, so again, you just win those, and then you can just discard the others as Ultra Ball fodder or Dowsing Machine fodder or anything like that. And finally, 3 Muscle Band. You don't really need a 4th, especially as you're not going to be. The deck doesn't want to have attackers going down each turn, so you're probably not going to be having more than 2 or 3 attackers on the board all game. Sorry, 3 or 4 attackers perhaps all game. Obviously, it's really good to counter Headringer, but there are a couple of things we can do about Headringer. But the 20 damage is just so good. It makes Bright Garden 140 for 2 energy, which is insanely efficient. Makes Breakthrough an 80-30 and X-Blast 160 damage, meaning that if they've even been scratched beforehand, Xerneas EX is going to be taking an AX out. Finally, we've got the 9 Fairy Energy, just because that's the deck's energy type, and the 1 DCE there's a lot more into the DCE than you would think. The DCE obviously helps with Breakthrough and X-Blast, but it also helps with a Headringered Florges EX. You can still set up a Bright Garden in a turn, because you can attach the DCE instead of wasting 3 Fairy Energies that are going to go down. You can attach the DCE and still be doing that huge 140 damage, or 120 I suppose, because you'll have the Headringer on you. But it gets out of Headringer quite nicely without wasting 3 of the 9 energy that you run in the deck, especially if you're going to be going down next turn. It's really useful for getting out of Headringer. But as with pretty much all of our other deck analyses, I'm guessing that's the word. I'm going to head into a battle, so we will save the deck and head into the versus section. Okay, so I'm going to try and grab a game here. I've already selected it all. But yeah, while I wait for an opponent, the list actually came from a good friend of both mine and Joe's, Alex Dow. He gave me his list. It was slightly different to the one that I just showed you, but the list was pretty similar overall. He actually ran a Mega Kangaskhan in his when he played it at Sutton Coldfield Cities, but said it wasn't really. It was the Pyroar counter, but it wasn't too influential in the deck. So he recommended me taking it out, so I did so, and put in another 1/1 Slurpuff line. But we've got a decent start, and we do actually grab the energy, which is nice. He's got a Trubbish. It's interesting, because that's not the Trubbish that's usually seen. I'm going to throw the Fairy Garden down and Muscle Band the Florges just in case he runs special, not special, Headringers. And I'm going to Pokemon Fan Club, grabbing a Xerneas and potentially another Spritzy. I mean, I can't see him taking out the Spritzy next turn, but to be safe I might grab another Spritzy anyway, just so we are going to be getting a turn 2 Aromatisse hopefully. I'm going to attach the energy to the Florges just so we can free retreat next turn, or lead if he enters into a bad hand. But that's I like the start we've got so far. I perhaps shouldn't have put the Fairy Garden down in case he runs 4 stadiums, but we do have that Dowsing Machine to get a 5th stadium if that's the case. He's going to Ultra Ball away an N and another Trubbish, so hopefully we might see what we're actually playing against here. for a Seismitoad EX. Okay. The deck can struggle against Seismitoad if it can't manage to find the Aromatisse, but it's not too big an issue if you can get a few energy on the board and they can't get a Trubbish Garbodor set up, then you've got free reign. And even so, Florges trades really well with Seismitoad, even though it's got less attack, less HP than the Seismitoad. It trades really well with Bright Garden compared to Quaking Punch. He's in a VS Seeker for the N, and N us into a new hand of 6. We don't get too much, but we do have an N for next turn, so that's okay. He's going to get a Float Stone, and if he gets he did not get the DCE. Okay, that's interesting, because the DCE could have been big if he managed to get that. He's going to get the Verbank into play, and also bench a Yveltal, and then free retreat, threatening the Quaking Punch next turn, which is a little bit scary, but it's not, hopefully not too bad. So this turn, I'm very tempted to play a few of these cards and then Juniper, but I really don't want to get rid of the second starting Megaphone. I'm definitely going to get the Xerneas down. I'm definitely going to attach the Muscle Band to it, just because it's going to be locked out soon. I suppose if he locks us out, yeah. I'm going to go for the Megaphone just to get that tool off, and then I'm actually going to Juniper, because he's only got a 2-card hand, and he's probably got an energy in there, to be fair, but even so, I don't feel too threatened at the moment. If I attach the energy, I'm going to attach the energy to the Florges, and then Professor's Letter, grabbing 2 more. And then I'm probably going to Ultra Ball one of those away with a VS Seeker, because he's going to lock us out of the VS Seeker next turn anyway. To grab a Swirlix to hope... Oh, do I want to grab a Swirlix or do I want to go for an Aromatisse? No, I'm going to grab a Swirlix, just to try and get that Slurpuff next turn. We don't need an Aromatisse this turn, to be honest, so I'm also going to VS Seeker to grab the Juniper back. Just because all of these I don't mind getting rid of, and if he's going to lock us out of the trainers next turn, and he decides to Quaking Punches but keep his small hand, I don't want to be ending, I want to be Junipering. So I'm going to Bright Garden for 140, and this is why the deck trades so well against Seismitoad. He's just taken 140 before even getting one Quaking Punch off. Admittedly, I am down to 100 HP myself, but hopefully if we can find a Slurpuff next turn, we can get rid of this status, or an Aromatisse and Max Potion if he can't get the Quaking Punch off. He's going to go for a Shauna, getting him a new 5 cards, so now I probably feel better about ending, and I think I might actually end, to be quite honest, depending on what he uses. He's going to Dowsing Machine and energy away, actually, so he's probably got another energy in hand. I would imagine getting the Garbodor, to be quite honest. Actually, if he gets a Garbodor out and a tool on it before I can get my Slurpuff out, that could be a problem. Hopefully we'll be able to find an out for a Slurpuff next turn at least, though. So, oh wait, he Dowsing Machine, so, and he can't get Supporter, so there's really not much he can do unless he goes for the Float Stone. Yeah, he's gone for the Float Stone. He's going to Float Stone the active and DC the bench. Okay, that makes sense. Meaning that he's still going to get a Quaking Punch off this turn. But this is actually only 2 snipes away from being taken out by Xerneas. Or if we can capture it up later on, I really don't need to do too much to the Seismitoad to take it out. So he's going to hit me for 30 and lock me out of trainers, meaning that I'm not going to be able to use this Dowsing Machine. But I am going to Juniper either way. I don't think I'm going to be able to. I don't think I'm going to get another out to that for a little while anyway, which is a shame. But so even so, we do get the Aromatisse, so I can move my energy a little bit more freely. But to be quite honest, I think I just want to do another 140 to this Toad, because I will be going down next turn. So perhaps I should. That's tough. I think I'm going to take out. I think I'm going to do the 140. just to soften this Toad up. He's only got one card in his hand, so I will be going down next turn to the Quaking Punch. But if we can get anything really, even if we can get just the one energy, I'll still be getting a pretty big hit off either 2 more energy with Geomancy, or if we can get the double colourless, I'll be taking out at least one of the Seismitoads. He's going to Shauna again and get a few more cards down, including the Florges EX, and he does actually get the Garbodor as well, so all he needs is a tool for that, which is a little bit scary, but I could quite easily Lysander that up next turn, depending on what I want to do. I'm not sure what he's considering at the moment. I know he's going to take me out. Yeah, he's taking me out with the Quaking Punch. So we are going to lose 2 energy there, but there's still 6 in the deck, I'm pretty sure I saw. So that's okay. I think I'm going to throw the baby Xerneas up. Even though we haven't got a Fairy Garden. There's the Fairy Garden. Okay. We are locked out of trainers, which is annoying, but I don't know whether to bench the Xerneas for an extra card with the Chorus, or try and get a Florges, because Florges trades a little bit better than Xerneas. Actually, no, it probably doesn't, because Xerneas can snipe, so I'm going to throw the Xerneas down, and then Chorus for 9, hopefully get in an energy. We do actually get the DCE. He may run Enhanced Hammer, so I'm going to save that DCE for next turn. Plus I'm going to be getting 2 off of the Geomancy anyway this turn. So yeah, I'm going to go for the Geomancy, attaching 1 to each of the Xerneas. And there's actually only 2 more in deck. Okay, that's worth noting. So we've got the last one in hand. And then passing over to him. So he's not going to go down. He's going to get another turn off with this active Seismitoad, but we will be able to attach the DCE, or just a regular energy, and go into the Xerneas. Well, take a big chunk out of the Xerneas. Well, take out one of the Seismitoad and take out another chunk from the other Seismitoad next turn. He's going to Lysander the Toad. The Xerneas up. I'm actually really tempted to take out the Garbodor this turn, but I think more efficiently I should probably take out the one of the Toads, or this Toad. How much is he going to be doing? So I've got 140 left. He's doing 20, 40. He's doing 100, 160, 140 next turn. So he will be knocking me out if he gets a Dark Energy. Which is a little bit scary. I think I'm making the right play in taking out or doing 30 to the other Toad. At least if we manage to, well, at least if he throws up that Toad, or throws anything up at the Toad up, we're still going to take 2 prizes on the Toad next turn, because we do have the DCE. We get both the Slurpuffs off the prizes, which is interesting. I was sure I saw that Slurpuff in the deck, but maybe that was another game I had earlier on with the, or another day with the deck. I played last night with the deck, so maybe I've still got that in my mind. He's going to get another Manectric out, and then Juniper away, and nothing really. So really good play on his part. And if he gets the Dark, he's actually got another 2 prizes here, but it looks like he's missed the Dark, which is interesting. He's going to get another Verbank down, but that's okay. I don't think I was going to retreat out of this. He's going to get Headringer off. That's not okay. That's a lot more annoying. But I want this Garbodor gone. How can I deal with the Garbodor without having Aromatisse? I could attach the DCE now, but then he can swing with the Yveltal and take a huge hit, and I do not want that to happen. There's this is pretty tough. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next turn. Oh, the opponent seems to have gone inactive. Hopefully he gets back into the game, but if not, we may get the win anyway. So we get the win anyway. I do not know what I would have done without that. Well, if he'd thrown that Yveltal up and taken out the Xerneas, because that was pretty much all my energy for the game. Gone. So that would have been scary. But yeah, I think that's probably, as long as I want to make the video for this, for this deck, I will. I'm planning on doing, like I did for Joe's Pyro list. I'm planning on doing sort of a 3 or 4 game, hour long, probably hour long testing match with the deck. Just because I love playing the deck. It's so much fun. It may not be as competitive as some of the other decks in the field at the moment, but it's just so much fun to use. So yeah, I might do one of those. I might record that tomorrow, or if I can think of any other decks that I want to cover that me and Joe haven't covered so far, then I may do another deck analysis tomorrow. But I'm going to put this up. It's Wednesday the 21st tonight, so I'm hopefully going to get it up in time for the overnight. So it should be up by Thursday the 24th UK time. And then hopefully I'll manage to record another video to get that up for Friday. I know I've been a little bit inactive on the channel, but unfortunately Joe is the more active of us two at the moment, considering that he is not still at school, whereas I am still at school, still studying hard. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. More importantly, I will try and get another video out for you in the next couple of days. And one last thing, I'm also going to a Primal Clash pre-release on Sunday the 25th, so this Sunday upcoming. So if any UK viewers are about that day and are heading to the Beaston pre-release, the Sunday one on the 25th, make sure you say hi. I will be there, hopefully pulling some Primal Kyogres, because they are my favourite card in the set, despite what Joe thinks. Teammates is good, but if you've seen our top 10 cards, then you'll probably get that. But yeah, I've been rambling for far too long now. I just want to thank you for watching, and look out for another deck analysis or a bit of playtesting with Florges EX in the next couple of days, just to sort of finish off the Florges EX deck sort of highlights and stuff. Thank you for watching, guys.